What would happen if every character in SML was charged for their crimes? Well, today, we're gonna find it out and go over the 8 biggest criminals in SML history. Starting with Jeffy, who has racked up the most felonies out of any SML character. And Jeffy's speeding ticket proves why. Where within seconds, Jeffy is pulled over for speeding. And then he gets pulled over again, and then gets another ticket, and before you know it, he's racked up over 45 tickets. These tickets include driving on the wrong side of the road, hitting an old lady, and so much more. And now Marvin owes $10,000 because of all these tickets. And since they don't have the money, they decide to rob a gas station. But of course, they get caught. Luckily, Brooklyn guy has a moment and lets them off scot-free, telling Jeffy he can never try again. Oh man, only if real life worked that way. Both speeding tickets and driving on the wrong side of the road are considered reckless driving in Florida. Jeffy could face up to 90 days of prison and a fine between $25 and $500. A hit and run, on the other hand, is considered a third-degree felony and can result in 5 years of jail time and a fine up to $5,000. And if the injuries were serious enough, it could be bumped up and he could face 15 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. But Jeffy's long list of crimes only gets crazier when he gets pulled over for drinking and driving in SML movie Jeffy Gets Arrested. In this video, Jeffy and the gang are having a party, and after realizing that they're out of root beer, Jeffy goes to buy some. Unfortunately for him, the cops are watching, and he ends up getting arrested. Now, we all know root beer doesn't contain any alcohol, but I thought I'd add this to the list as Jeffy was driving like it was actually alcohol, and he did end up getting arrested for it. Jeffy would have to pay $1,000 and could face 6 months in jail for the DUI. He could also get a 6-month suspension on his license. Stealing is nothing new for Jeffy, as we've already covered his robbery with Marvin, but let's talk about one of his most ridiculous ones. In SML movie Jeffy Attacks the Judge, Jeffy and Marvin go to the store for batteries, when Jeffy spots a $10 Minecraft Steve toy. Marvin says no, but Jeffy takes it into his own hands. Literally, he steals it. Obviously, he gets caught and sent to court, but instead of taking the L, Jeffy attacks not 1, but 2 judges, and supposedly kills them. Like, seriously, how is bro attacking a judge through a phone? This is absolutely insane. And they were about to execute Jeffy, but then it turns out that the judges actually faked their deaths just to go to Disney World. So Jeffy wasn't actually guilty of murder, but Jeffy escaped a maximum security prison. So yeah, that one's definitely staying on his criminal history. Stealing a Minecraft figurine is considered petty theft, so nothing would really happen. But for escaping prison, on the other hand, Jeffy could face up to an additional 13 years of prison time. Now, onto some of the more serious crimes Jeffy committed, in none other than SML movie Jeffy's Bad Word, one of the most controversial SML videos of all time. And I'll just let the clip speak for itself.
Daddy to me.
No, Jeffy. He just spanked you. He was very upset.
No, he stuck his fingers in my and twirled them around and then sniffed them.
Jeffy then calls 911 and informs them about the crime Mario has committed. He gets arrested on the allegations of sexually assaulting his child. For making up a false accusation, Jeffy would be fined $1,000 and have a 1-year jail sentence. But because Marvin ended up in prison because of this, it's also considered false imprisonment and obstruction of justice, adding an additional 3 years and a $2,500 fine. If you thought this was bad though, brace yourselves, because it only gets worse with the most brutal crime Jeffy has ever committed: eating a gingerbread man. Yup, you heard me right. In SML movie Jeffy the Elf, we see Chef PeePee getting the gingerbread man out of the oven. This is until Jeffy decides to ruin the whole Christmassy vibe, and then right then and there, Jeffy becomes a murderer, oblivious to the fact that they are real humans, if I can call them that. Jeffy proceeds to take a bite of the gingerbread man's body, technically committing a murder.
I just ate the gingerbread man. I didn't know it was illegal.
You didn't know cannibalism was illegal?
It's a cookie.
In real life, if this was actually considered a murder, Jeffy would face up to 25 years in prison for this, as it would be considered involuntary manslaughter. You might think that last crime was brutal, but hold on, because this next one is even more disturbing. In SML movie Jeffy the Wrestler, after watching the wrestler Bone Crusher win his title, Jeffy decides it would be a great idea for him to compete. Conveniently enough, the WWE anchor says whoever donates the most canned food would get an opportunity to fight Bone Crusher. This is probably the only time Jeffy is glad Marvin got him plenty of of green beans. The time has come for the fight. Right from the beginning, Jeffy mercilessly starts beating Bone Crusher to a pulp, oblivious to the fact that this is actually staged. Poor Bone Crusher tried telling him that, but as a result, Jeffy started beating him even harder. The rest of the fight I can only describe with one word: disturbing. In the end, Jeffy ends up killing him and getting the prize. But Jeffy, unsatisfied with his victory, decides to take things even further. I'll let you see it for yourself.
There is one thing I would like to say about Bone Crusher. I don't believe he's dead!
Oh dear God! The horror! The horror!
Well, I guess that's what you call dedication, or maybe just insanity. The murder of Bone Crusher would be considered a second-degree murder, and would result in a life sentence. Alright, enough roasting Jeffy. Let's talk about the one time he actually did something good for once. And by good, I mean taking down a literal predator. In Jeffy's 20th birthday, Jeffy has a rare moment of reflection with Brooklyn Guy after getting a toy that reminds him of his traumatizing childhood. Turns out, CJ Winkle, a known pedophile, tormented Jeffy and his sister when they were kids. Jeffy tried to take him out back then, but he was too weak. Now, it's payback time. So somehow, Jeffy gets an entire monster truck, tapes CJ to the front, and goes out to finish the job. Jeffy drives the monster truck through his old home, and in the process of doing this, he ends up killing CJ. Honestly, this might be the first crime he's done that we can all get behind. The crime would be considered a first-degree murder, as he technically did plan it out. Jeffy would definitely end up in prison for life with no parole. But believe it or not, this isn't even the worst crime Jeffy's committed. In SML movie Jeffy Plays Grand Theft Auto 6, Jeffy thinks that he got early access to GTA 6 VR, and this is where he goes full-on chaos mode. First victim, Chef PeePee, who gets absolutely demolished. But what's GTA without a little bit of Grand Theft Auto? Jeffy steals a car from Goodman, and then in true GTA fashion, he runs him over. But it doesn't stop there. With his 5-star wanted level, he plows through Tyler, blows up a cop car, and steals a tank. Because why not? Even Brooklyn Guy can't handle him. But eventually, Jeffy runs out of ammo and can't use the cheat code, so he gets sent to jail. In this episode, Jeffy would be charged for aggravated battery, Grand Theft Auto, vehicular homicide, first-degree murder of a police officer, destroying a prison car in a red Lamborghini, and finally escaping custody. Last, but certainly not least, we have an episode where Jeffy becomes the president of the United States. Good God, I just hope he doesn't nuke anything. Please. But of course he will. Seriously, what's wrong with people voting Jeffy to be the most important person in the world? Right after winning the election and becoming president, Brooklyn Guy informs Jeffy that he can literally do anything, and brings him the button. Yes, the nuclear button. And what are two things that Jeffy absolutely despises the most? That's right, green beans and school. But wait, Jeffy, come on, think about it. If you press that button, you're gonna destroy the entirety of America.
Well, it's a small price to pay for me to be happy.
Whatever, man, you're the president. Using a nuclear weapon would not only kill millions, but would also cause a natural catastrophe. Jeffy would definitely get life in prison, and even probably the death penalty for this. Jeffy has committed a bunch of insane crimes. But for now, I'm gonna keep his total prison sentence a secret, and at the end of the video, we're gonna reveal every character's sentence, and see which character in SML is the biggest criminal. But now, let's talk about a character who rivals Jeffy's absurd criminal activity. None other than Brooklyn Guy. Much like Jeffy, we'll be starting easy with Brooklyn Guy's violations and working our way up to his most absurd crimes. On multiple occasions, Brooklyn Guy was caught trespassing and stealing. In SML movies Home Alone and Home Alone 2, Brooklyn Guy with some of his crooks were trying to steal whatever they could from Bowser's home, much like in the Home Alone franchise, hence the name for the episodes. Unfortunately for them, Bowser Jr. is a menace and somehow manages to outsmart them all. Trespassing could cost Brooklyn Guy a fine up to $1,000 and potentially land him 6 months in jail. Imagine one day you're sitting at home, managing your taxes, and out of nowhere, $200,000 is deposited in your bank account. And not only that, but it's from none other than the IRS. Well, this is exactly what happened to Brooklyn Guy in SML movie Brooklyn Brooklyn Guy's tax evasion. The crime he committed in this one is pretty self-explanatory. Now, we all know what the right thing to do would be in this situation. Obviously, returning the money. But like most of us probably wouldn't, Brooklyn Guy didn't do that either. Instead, he went off and did what pretty much anyone else would do with the money. Buying senseless amounts of food, going to strip clubs, and even going to Paris with one of the strippers. Now that's what I call living life. Tax evasion would get him 3 years of prison time with a whopping $250,000 fine for not giving back the other $200,000. Now, I'm sure many of you remember SML movie The Dalmatian, in which Brooklyn Guy literally commits zoophobia with his new firefighter dog multiple times, which is just beyond disgusting. And also, in Goodman's cat, he straight up commits animal cruelty by tasing Mr. Goodman's cat, which is also half Yeti. And the only way to kill a half Yeti cat is by blowing it up with fireworks. At least, that's what the veterinarian Brooklyn Guy says. I don't know. To cover his tracks, he makes a coat out of the cat's fur, and even has the nerve to show it off and sell it to Goodman. Both zoophilia and are considered a third-degree felony. For he would get 7 years in prison plus a $25,000 fine. And as an additional punishment, he would have a lifetime ban on pet ownership and 500 hours of community service at an animal shelter. But no actual contact with animals, because, you know, you're a menace, Brooklyn Guy. Come on. Well, we all know that Brooklyn Guy isn't exactly the father of the year when it comes to Penelope. For example, in Jeffy's pregnancy scare, he literally pushes her down the stairs after thinking she's pregnant. That could have gotten her seriously injured. And it's honestly just straight up child. But that's not all, because in SML movie Five Nights at Freddy's sister location, he ends up getting Penelope killed, leading to her possessing the circus baby animatronic. Not only that, but he also abuses her and the other animatronics by shocking them with their shock collars, which, surprise surprise, makes them murderous, targeting him, Marvin, and Jeffy. But if that wasn't enough, there's another instance where he's a horrible father. In SML movie Penelope Gets Taken, Penelope gets kidnapped while on the phone with him. Unfortunately for her, that's the same night the Miami Heat is playing, so he does absolutely nothing about his daughter. Oh, and let's not forget, in this episode, he's also a police officer, so not only is he neglecting his child, but he's also failing to do his job. Great. A serious child neglect case would put him in prison for up to 15 years, and he would be fined $10,000. And since Penelope ended up dying, he could even face 30 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. In SML movie The Acorn, he falsely arrests Charlie for just finding some literal grass in his pocket, accusing him of dealing real drugs. Meanwhile, he lets a criminal get away with murder. To top it off, he starts shooting like an idiot when the acorn falls on a police car, somehow shooting at Charlie 27 times and not hitting a single bullet. And thanks to his hearing problems, he apparently can't tell the difference between a falling acorn and a gunshot, constantly mistaking one for the other. After losing his job as the police officer, he comes up with the idea to shoot the notorious straggler who is roaming the streets in order to get his trust badge back. This almost got Rosed kill, as Brooklyn Guy is so inaccurate with his gun. For the false arrest, Brooklyn Guy could face up to 2 years in prison. And for letting the actual criminal escape, that could also get him another 4 years in prison plus a $6,000 fine. Not only is he not a good father, he's not a great husband either. We all know he's cheated on Karen in multiple occasions. But in SML movie The Purge, he actually kills her for annoying him. And also, in SML movie Brooklyn Guy Tries to Help, he even kills the Miami Heat star Jimmy Butler. So yeah, he's a murderer as well. Both of these murders would classify as first-degree murders, meaning that Brooklyn Guy would for sure get a life sentence without parole. Now, I know many of you would say that zoophobia or are some of the most disturbing things Brooklyn Guy has ever done. But no, I wouldn't agree. In SML movie Bowser Jr. Goes to Military School, Brooklyn Guy reaches a whole new level of cruelty. He gets kids killed by landmines, brutally punishes and abuses Bowser Jr., forces him to watch as he burns his favorite Thomas the Tank Engine toy, makes him eat dirt and worms, and even pours hot sauce in his eyes, which could have easily caused blindness. Later in the video, he hears Bowser Jr. making a huge mess in the house. He's fully prepared to even kill or hurt Bowser Jr. until Bowser stepped in and told him to leave. This is without a doubt the most evil Brooklyn Guy has ever acted. Killing multiple children would get him multiple life sentences without parole. And for psychologically abusing Bowser Jr., he would get an additional 30 years and a fine of $1 million, as this is considered an aggravated with serious consequences. Let's take a quick break from the puppets and dive into some of the crimes committed by our psychotic, drunken CEO of McDonald's, Ronald McDonald, starting with his indulgence in prostitution. On several occasions, we see Ronald talking about it and getting involved with such women, and since Ronald was a repeat offender in and not just someone who did it once, he would face up to 1 year in prison and a fine of $2,500. In SML movie The Burger Problem, Ronald commits one of the worst fast food industry crimes, serving E. coli infested quarter pounders. Well, most people recover, these burgers end up killing 10 people, but when he hears that Burger King is now selling better than McDonald's, he panics and commits defamation. He does this by paying Jeffy to fake food poisoning from a Burger King burger, trying to frame his competition. Defamation is a civil offense, but knowingly selling tainted food that kills people? Yeah, that's a major crime. Ronald would be charged for negligent homicide, resulting in a 15-year sentence and a $10,000 fine per death, meaning he would get about 150 years in prison plus an $100,000 fine. Also, McDonald's would most likely shut down for good. In SML movie Dougie's KFC Pizza, KFC reveals its new menu item, the Cheetza, aka the chicken pizza. Ronald initially seems thrilled by the idea and even enjoys the meal. However, things take a dark turn when he kills Colonel Sanders in a twisted attempt to claim the creation as his own.
Cause you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go find the Colonel, grab him, please, this big old wrinkly, and I'm gonna say, hey, stop selling my and get off my.
After laying out a disturbingly detailed murder plan, he actually goes through with it.
You know what? We'll talk. Let me grab something real quick. Die, old man! Die! That's right. Your delicious chicken pizza is mine.
And that's how the McChicken Kanye West meal was created. For killing Colonel Sanders, he would face life in prison without parole. We all know that Ronald McDonald is a greedy, ruthless, and short-tempered man who will stop at nothing to protect his wealth, even if it means killing those who try to con him out of money. This is perfectly demonstrated in SML movie Junior's Free Fries, where he attempts to murder Junior, Joseph, and Cody by unleashing Grimace on them. And this is all because they tried to get free fries for the children in Africa. This is a brutal, yet somehow real example of how far those with immense power and wealth go to protect their fortunes, no matter who gets hurt in the process. For attempted murder, Ronald would face up to 30 years in prison for each victim, and with 3 victims, that adds up to a total of 90 years in prison. Yikes. Another prime example of Ronald being a selfish, greedy person is in SML movie The Business Deal. In this episode, Marvin and Goodman pitch a brilliant idea to him, adding Kraft/Velveeta cheese to his burgers. And at first, Ronald dismisses the idea as stupid and not being worth his time. But the moment Marvin lies and claims that Wendy's is interested in the deal, Ronald suddenly has a change of heart, proving just how greedy and opportunistic he really is. But of course, he won't just steal the deal from Wendy's. Oh no, he's got his own ways of getting that done.
Hey, Wendy, it's me, Ronald. I was wondering if maybe you want to come over to my place for dinner, like a date. Yeah, why do I want to take you on a date? Because I likes you and
Wendy, being as gullible as ever, agrees to come on a date with Ronald. Unfortunately for him, things don't go exactly as planned. First off, he gave her the wrong burger, and after putting poison in her drink, she accidentally spills it. So what's the plan now? Break her neck, of course. And after doing the deed, Ronald actually has no intention to sign the contract. But Wendy didn't actually die, as she comes back at the end of the video, saying her neck game is strong, so I guess she didn't die. So this one counts as attempted murder, which results in 30 years in prison. Alright, now back to the puppets. And one of, if not arguably the biggest criminal in SML is Dougie. And some of the crimes he's committed are insane. In SML movie Black Yoshi's Big Bamboozle, Black Yoshi seems to be rather annoyed that Marvin doesn't want to give him $500 or his credit card information. So he decides to take matters into his own hands and start earning money himself. Not by working, of course, but by scamming people. His genius plan is to be a debt collector in order to get people's credit card information, with his first unfortunate victim being Judith, then Brooklyn Guy, and finally Mr. Goodman. And just like that, Dougie got himself a brand new PS4 and his favorite game, Call of Duty, a bunch of Kool-Aid, and even a headphone set. Despite his genius plan, in the end he got caught by Mr. Goodman, and unfortunately for him, Goodman isn't just a normal guy who would forgive you for such crime. So in return, he demands Black Yoshi's nipples. And sadly for him, he got them. Yikes. Black Yoshi has committed 3 crimes in total here: fraud, identity theft, and theft. Each of these could land him anywhere from a few months to 30 years in prison, depending on the severity, with fines reaching well over $50,000. So it's safe to say he's in some serious legal trouble. Another instance of Dougie scamming people is in SML movie Black Yoshi Scam, where he commits money fraud on GoFundMe. What he did basically is make people believe that he has flesh-eating bacteria, and on top of all of that, he can't read. But strangely enough, he somehow manages to raise a whopping $2 million. Now, since Mr. Goodman is the owner of GoFundMe, he obviously comes to check the legitimacy of these claims. Right when Brooklyn Guy was about to examine him, Black Yoshi can't lie anymore, and they end up taking the money back. In this one, he committed fraud by faking his sickness, and theft by deception. Since the amount of money he stole is more than $100,000, his prison sentence would be 30 years and a fine of $75,000 for each crime. Okay, enough with the petty scams and frauds. Let's explore some of Dougie's far worse crimes. In SML movie Black Yoshi's Kids, we get to see Black Yoshi's evil side. In the beginning, Black Yoshi gets a delivery, and by delivery, I mean a son. An unwanted son that now Black Yoshi obviously doesn't want anything to do with. So he does what he's best at. He throws him straight out the window, obviously not wanting to pay a single cent of child support. Now, Mario, being the loving father, he can't just stand there and watch Black Yoshi abuse his child. So he tries to change his mind, but Black Yoshi doesn't seem to budge. But then, Black Yoshi has a change of heart after getting a $1,500 family welfare check. Now, what's better than 1 kid and $1,500 monthly? 24 kids and $20,000 monthly. That's right, Black Yoshi got himself another 24 babies from a local park. And after he gets caught, he even tries to bribe a police officer, which is also a crime in itself. For aggravated he would get 25 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. For child neglect, he would get a 5-year prison sentence with a $5,000 fine for each child. Kidnapping them, on the other hand, would land him in jail for life without parole, and a fine of $10,000 for each child. And for bribery, he would get 2 years and a $7,000 fine. While kidnapping 24 kids is undeniably horrific, it still doesn't compare to the severity of murder. In SML movie The Call of Duty Blackout, a sudden power outage leaves Black Yoshi unable to play Call of Duty. At 3 a.m., no regular electrician would come to fix it, but luckily for Black Yoshi, Brooklyn Guy isn't your average electrician. He's the kind of guy who will do anything for a quick buck. And this time, he even brings his son along, Brooklyn Guy Jr. Eventually, they manage to restore the power, and Black Yoshi can finally get back to his game. But then comes the issue of payment. Brooklyn Guy initially demands a staggering $5 million, but after some negotiation, he lowers it to $500. Mario, clearly unwilling to pay that much, refuses. But then, Brooklyn Guy's son comes up with an idea. Instead of cash, he demands Black Yoshi's game as payment, which is a big mistake. Without a moment of hesitation, Black Yoshi grabs the gun and shoots Brooklyn Guy's son dead on the spot. His cold-blooded don't stop there though, because in SML movie Black Yoshi's Blank Check, Black Yoshi commits yet another unforgettable crime. And here's how it unfolds. The government accidentally sends Black Yoshi a blank check. So what does he do? He writes himself a check for $1 million, and somehow they actually send it to him. With his newfound wealth, he buys some new friends, one of them being Tyrone, and altogether they do all sorts of crazy stuff. The craziest of these, a real-life game of Call of Duty. They set their own rules, and they count to 3 and start shooting each other. But there's a catch. Brooklyn Guy has a high-powered gun, while Tyrone is stuck with a pistol. And you could probably guess how this ends. Yup, Black Yoshi straight up blows Tyrone's brains out. Woo, way to go, Black Yoshi, you just ruined your life. Black Yoshi would get life imprisonment without parole for both Tyrone and Brooklyn Guy's son, and also an additional 10 years in prison for writing himself in $1 million check. Alright guys, now we're halfway through the character. characters. But make sure to stick around until the end because you want to see who the biggest criminal in SML is. And their total prison sentence is actually insane. But the next criminal we're gonna be putting in the slammer is Junior. And his criminal history proves that he's anything but Junior when it comes to his crimes. Okay, I'm sorry, that was bad. With this one, we're gonna get straight to the point. No funny crimes like tax evasion or traffic violations. In SML movie Jeffy's laser pointer, Jackie Chu is demonstrating the speed of light, and Jeffy, fascinated by the laser pointer, manages to get his hands on the device. And that's when the mischief begins. At first, it starts off lightly. Junior tells Jeffy to point the laser at Cody's eyes. Jeffy, of course, listens and ends up damaging Cody's eyesight. Realizing how dangerous the laser pointer is, and that it's not a toy, they decide to return it at school. But then, Junior comes up with another brilliant idea, pointing the laser at an airplane flying overhead. Jeffy probably wouldn't have done this on his own, but when Junior tells him to, he doesn't hesitate. And the next thing you know, the airplane crashes. The reason I'm counting this one as Junior's crime and not Jeffy is simply because Jeffy didn't show any signs of doing it until Junior told him to. Now, thinking logically, Jeffy did it, so I guess both of them are equally responsible. For causing the plane crash, Junior would get 60 days in prison and a $500 fine for endangering lives. He could also end up getting 5 years in prison for property damage. In SML movie The Celebrity Crush, Junior's envy goes too far when Penelope gushes over her favorite star, Tony Sherbert. At first, Cody calms him down, but when Tony personally invites Penelope to a meet and greet, Junior snaps. Since the concert is sold out, Junior sabotages Tony's parachute, hoping to make him crash. But just as they finish, they learn Tony was parachuting for a Make-A-Wish cancer survivor. Too late to stop it, they watch in horror as the tragedy unfolds. And to make it even worse, Tony never even invited Junior's girlfriend, Penelope. What Tony meant was his own girlfriend with the same name. Killing Tony counts as a first-degree murder, which would easily get Junior life imprisonment without parole. Killing a Make-A-Wish kid would probably be considered involuntary manslaughter, and in doing which would result in an additional 23 years in prison. Given the horrific and reckless nature of the crime, the consequences would likely be way more severe than just 23 years. Junior's destructive tendencies don't stop there though, because in SML movie April Fools, his pranks take a deadly turn. Cause in this video, Junior commits yet another murder. The episode begins with Junior pranking Chef PeePee, telling him that his mother died. Cruel prank, but whatever. To get back at him, Chef PeePee stages a scene where Junior's favorite toy, Thomas the Tank Engine, dies. Fortunately for Junior, it was just a prank, but it can't go unpunished. So Junior and Toad come up with a revenge prank, putting bleach in Chef PeePee's Sprite. Needless to say, Chef PeePee drinks it and dies from it. Such a horrible way to go. But that's not the only time he ended up killing him, because in SML movie Evil Chef PeePee, Junior and Joseph wanted to prank Chef PeePee by dropping water balloons on his head. Of course, water balloons wouldn't harm anyone, right? Well, it turns out this water balloon is frozen. Poor Chef PeePee dies right on the spot. While these deaths were brutal, they would technically be considered as manslaughter since Junior didn't intend for Chef PeePee to die, but for each incident, he could face up to 27 years in prison. In SML movie The Spy Balloon, Cody shows Junior his rocket toy. Junior gets curious about how high it can shoot, so they go outside to try it. Unintentionally, they hit a Chinese spy balloon, earning themselves a Medal of Honor and a new job at the Missile Defense Team. For the record, Cody tries to explain what they did was an accident, but Junior quickly shuts them down. Confident in his new missile team, the general makes a bold announcement mocking China and even daring them to go all out. China takes the dare seriously and decides to nuke San Francisco. The gang then tries to stop the nuke with their anti-missile system, but unfortunately for them, the entire population of San Francisco, 2 million lives, were lost in seconds. Junior, dude, you gotta stop killing people already. Come on, man. Well, Junior couldn't actually prevent the nuke. Technically, it was his fault, and he did lie about having missile defense. So for failing to stop the nuke, he would get 15 years in prison. Now, for lying about the missile defense system, he would get about 20 years in prison and a fine of $250,000 on top of that. Additionally, he would be charged with federal reckless endangerment, resulting in 10 more years and a fine of $500,000. And let's not forget about the 2 million lives lost, easily making this a life sentence or a death penalty. But if you thought that Junior couldn't cause any more chaos, think again. Because in the past machine, Junior, Joseph, and Cody get their hands on a bop it that can summon anything from the past. Their first genius idea? Abraham Lincoln. But right after he was assassinated, so he's already dead. Next up, Joseph's mom and Harambe. At first, it's all fun and games, but then Junior goes way too far by summoning a T-Rex. As the dinosaur literally literally destroys everything. Junior comes up with a brilliant plan though. Summon the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. But after realizing this is a terrible mistake, he tries to come up with another meteor to counter it. But after this doesn't work, he's not done. His final idea, the Big Bang. Without telling Cody, Junior triggers the event that created the universe, and it ends up destroying everything instead. This one's a little bit tricky to determine since no one has actually done something like that before, but I'm guessing death penalty. Now, onto another character that rivals Junior's insane list of crimes, Goodman. And oh boy, where do I start with this one? Stealing seems like an appropriate start. One of many instances of this would be an SML movie, The Stolen Egg, where he steals a $20 million golden egg from the Easter Bunny. This is stealing, but however, since the egg is worth $20 million, it's considered a major theft. He also steals Mario's hat on multiple occasions, Junior's Pokemon cards, Marvin's candy on Halloween, and so much more. He's also changed his name to Poopy Butt in order to get a $1 million check in SML movie Jeffy's shirt. For the petty thefts mentioned, Mr. Goodman probably wouldn't get much but a fine, and for the major theft and the fraudulent check, he would end up with over 14 years in prison and up to $10,000 in fines. Now, aside from the theft, he's almost always committing some sort of assault or battery. The main victim is his poor butler, Chives, and of course, Marvin. One of the good examples of this would be an SML movie Goodman Goes to Jail, where Goodman ends up getting locked up for tax evasion. Chives gets locked up with him as well, but not only did he get locked up for no reason, but now he has to endure all sorts of torture from Goodman. First, he assaults him, then he makes him lay down as a mattress because the jail bed isn't comfortable, and then he even makes him vibrate like a massaging chair. But here's the worst part. Goodman needs to take a dump, but the toilet seat isn't clean. Not to worry, because Chives will lick it clean for him. And if that isn't gross enough, after Goodman is done, he makes Chives spit on his butt to make it clean. You're disgusting, Goodman. He could face up to 15 years of prison for assault, battery, and another 15 years for forced labor, making Chives perform degrading and humiliating acts. He also sometimes kidnaps people, as seen in SML movie The Life of Goodman, where he kidnaps Marvin for not being able to pay his house payment, one of the signature crimes he commits in almost every time he is shown pressuring someone against their will. Marvin is the prime example of this, whose balls are never safe around Mr. Goodman, as he almost always threatens to cut them off and eat them if he doesn't listen. Kidnapping would probably land him in prison for about 7 years, and pressuring someone against their will would get them around 6 months. Mr. Goodman is also prone to doing mutilation and even cannibalism. In SML movie Black Yoshi's Bamboozle, after Goodman discovers Black Yoshi's scam, he ends up biting off and eating his nails. As mentioned before, he seems to have a soft spot for Marvin's balls. And in SML movie Nintendo Switch, he implies that he's eaten human testicles many times. He would get him charged for aggravated battery, resulting in 3 years in prison, and cannibalism with the murder of a person would get him life in prison without parole. His crimes don't stop there though, because Chives, his butler, once stated that he's Mr. Goodman's 14th butler, and all the previous butlers wanted to quit, but instead of letting them go, Mr. Goodman decided to, well, permanently relieve them of their duties. For this, Goodman would get 13 life sentences. But what about Marvin? What kind of crimes has this little goober committed? Well, let's start with Scooter's parents, where Mario does an incredibly awful thing. A girl named Haiti goes missing, and his parents offer a $486 reward. Meanwhile, Scooter is also looking for his parents. Seeing an opportunity, Marvin hatches a plan. He dresses up Scooter as Haiti and tries to claim the reward. He calls Haiti's father, arranging a meeting, and convinces Scooter to play along with it, telling him that it's Halloween. The most concerning part though is that Haiti's father doesn't even realize that this isn't his daughter. But I mean, hey, at least Mario got paid. Fraud would get him 5 years in prison, and false representation would get you 60 days in jail and a $500 fine, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor would get him up to a year in prison. In SML movie Jeffy's Big Idea, Marvin commits battery resulting in serious injuries. It's Marvin and Rose's 5th anniversary, and Marvin gifts Rose a star. Romantic, right? Well, not for long. because a robber tries to steal Rose's purse before Marvin can act. But then Super D swoops in to save the day, making Marvin look useless. Determined to prove he's better, Marvin turns to Brooklyn Guy, who conveniently has a solution. In true Super Mario fashion, Mario eats a Mega Mushroom to grow bigger. Meanwhile, Rose and Super D are arguing because she refuses to kiss him. Perfect timing because Marvin jumps off the second floor and lands on Super D, breaking his back and paralyzing him from the neck down. All's well that ends well, right? Aggravated battery with serious injuries would land him up to 15 years in jail without parole. Here's another instance where Marvin's jealousy could have ended really badly. In SML movie Jeffy Almost Drowns, Marvin and Rose go to the beach, and as the title says, Jeffy almost drowns, but Rose's ex-boyfriend Brad comes to save the day. Rose wants to thank him, so she invites him over for dinner, and Marvin is obviously jealous, so he pays Chef PeePee to make the food as gross as possible. Things get complicated when Brad starts to choke and seemingly dies. Marvin, in panic, tells Chef PeePee, so they decide it's best to decompose him in acid and bury him in the backyard. Luckily, before they go on with their plan, Brooklyn Guy comes in to save the day, and in the end, Brad wakes up and it turns out he just has a bad shellfish allergy. Marvin would be charged for attempted murder, as Brad almost died from the food, and tampering with evidence. For attempted murder, he would get 13 years in prison without parole. While decomposing him in acid may have been considered attempted murder, bear in mind that technically, Marvin didn't know he was alive, so I'm just gonna put that as tampering with evidence. In SML movie Mario Sells Jeffy, he does yet another unthinkable thing. One evening, Mr. Goodman came to their house with an unusual request. He wants to buy Jeffy for $10 million. You're probably wondering, why would anyone in their right mind want to buy another man's kid? Especially a kid like Jeffy. Well, the reason is simple. Richard, Mr. Goodman's son, wants a new pet. Marvin was reluctant at first, but as soon as Mr. Goodman said the price, he immediately agreed. Now, the problem is Rose, but eventually he solves that too and sells him for good. Sadly for Marvin though, his happiness didn't last for long because later the same night, Mr. Goodman returned Jeffy and reported his $10 million transaction to Marvin as fraud. Human trafficking is a serious crime and would cost Marvin 30 years of his life, resulting in an $800,000 fine. For child and he would also get an additional $1,500 fine. In SML movie Breaking Bad, things aren't looking too good for Marvin because Mr. Goodman has just sold his house mortgage to the Mexican cartel. And I'm sure everyone knows what happens if you don't pay the cartel. Oh, and Brooklyn Guy also informed him that he has lung cancer, so he needs a solution. And luckily, blue rock candy is now legal and the worth has skyrocketed. Marvin then has a brilliant idea to start cooking so he can pay off his mortgage. And eventually, the cartel hears about this, putting a stop to his actions. Marvin would get charged for manufacturing and distributing illegal substances, as well as conspiracy with a criminal organization, both resulting in a 25-year sentence for each. Okay, are you guys ready for one of the sickest and most diabolical things Marvin has ever done? In SML movie Jeffy's Daughter, Marvin and Rose are trying to have a baby, but sadly, Marvin can't get Rose pregnant, so they decide to go for an artificial insemination, and here's where the problem begins. Brooklyn Guy ends up mixing up Jeffy and Marvin's Baja Blast. So now Rose is pregnant with Jeffy's baby, Jeffica. While playing outside eating grass, Jeffica is snatched by a hawk and then she is never seen again. And at the end of the episode, we get to see the real culprit behind this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hawk, for taking that baby. Yes, I'll Apple Pay you right now.
This is just messed up, Marvin. For hire in Florida, Marvin would get imprisonment for life without parole and a $15,000 fine. Now, we all know that Chef PeePee isn't treated the best in the SML universe. And naturally, like many SML characters, he's lost it at some point doing some pretty messed up stuff. In SML movie Chef PeePee Goes to Hollywood, Chef PeePee finally gets a shot at real money when Jason Derulo hires him. But don't be fooled, since Chef PeePee is a terrible cook. Jason Derulo fires him almost immediately. Now jobless and broke, he starts begging for money. Meanwhile, Junior, missing Chef PeePee, travels to Hollywood to find him. And sure enough, he does. But even better, they stumble upon $50,000 in a McDonald's bag next to a trash can. Naturally, they all go out, blowing it on a Lamborghini, jewelry, and so much more. But with big money comes big problems. That night, Mr. Goodman's crook shows up to collect the money, which they obviously don't don't have. Soon, Mr. Goodman himself arrives, ready to take what is his. Desperate, Chef PeePee cooks him a dinner, supposedly worth $50,000. And shockingly, Goodman actually likes it, forgiving them for their debt. Talk about luck. For theft and misuse of stolen goods, Chef PeePee would get 12 years in prison and a $3,000 fine for each offense. Not only is he constantly bullied by Junior and Bowser, but in SML movie Chef PeePee the Babysitter, even Jeffy gets to taste the fun of doing it. Mario has asked Chef PeePee to babysit Jeffy for one evening, and in return, he would give him $500. Jeffy, being the half-brained idiot, constantly keeps getting on his nerves, tossing flour on the floor, spilling milk everywhere, even in the store, and so much more. Chef PeePee gets tipped over the edge and is about to grab a knife to stab Jeffy, but this is when Mario shows up with his $500. Phew, that could have ended horribly. Attempted murder would have landed him 12 years behind bars. There is one time he actually did murder, though. In SML short The Perfect Pizza, Bowser demands him to make the best pizza there is. The only ingredients he needs are cheese and mushrooms. Easy, right? Chef PeePee should have those basic cooking ingredients. Well, it turns out he doesn't. He needs mushrooms, or else Bowser is literally going to kill him. Luckily for Chef PeePee though, Toad just showed up, and as we all know, he's a mushroom, so what does he do? He gives him a nice haircut, obviously meaning he cut his head off. And there you have it, a perfect pizza. Intentionally killing Toad would get Chef PeePee a life imprisonment without parole. After enduring years of torment for Bowser and Junior, Chef PeePee never got his revenge. But in SML movie The Purge, he finally got his chance. Alongside Brooklyn Guy, Simmons, and Karen, Chef PeePee hatches a plan to break into Junior's house and kill him. After searching, he and Brooklyn Guy tie up Junior, and they're ready to end him. But after fantasizing about this moment for years, Chef PeePee refuses to let Brooklyn Guy steal his kill. So instead, he shoots Brooklyn Guy. Just as Chef PeePee is about to finish off Junior, he asks why he hates him so much. What follows? A 6-hour rant where Chef PeePee lists every single reason for his hatred for Junior. Completely losing track of time, the purge is over, and he totally misses his chance. Talk about unlucky. But another time he went on a rampage was in SML movie Among Us, where Junior accidentally summons aliens, trapping the gang in space, where an imposter lurks. Brooklyn Guy discovers Bowser's dead body, but soon after, Shrek, Jeffy, and Joseph are picked off one by one. In classic Among Us style, the group panics and holds meetings after every death. One by one, Marvin, Rose, Cody, and Ken are ejected into space. But who is the real killer? Well, it turns out to be Chef PeePee. He nearly gets away with it, but when he tries to kill Junior, he gets caught in the act. Despite Junior's desperate pleas, Brooklyn Guy refuses to believe him, and Junior gets thrown into space too. And in the end, Chef PeePee stands victorious. Way to go, PeePee. Since all of these killings Chef PeePee committed were planned and pretty aggressive, he would get a life sentence without parole for each individual he committed. But now, it's finally time to add up everyone's crimes and see which of these SML characters would serve the most time in prison. Starting with our number 8 spot, not very surprisingly, we have Marvin. With a total amount of 1 life sentence, an additional 136 years in prison, and fines of $80,500 for doing such things as hiring a hitman Hawk, dealing drugs, and even attempted murder. At number 7 is Ronald McDonald, whose total sentence for murder Colonel Sanders, killing 10 people with his quarter pounders, and so much more is 1 life sentence, 273 years in prison, and fines of $105,000. At number 6, we have Brooklyn Guy, who committed serious crimes like murder and torture. His final sentence is 3 lifetimes in prison, an additional 121 years, and fines of $310,000. Next, we have Chef PeePee with 5 life sentences, an additional 60 years in prison, and fines of $30,000. The 4th biggest criminal in SML is Dougie, whose total sentence is 27 freaking life sentences, plus an additional 300 years in prison and $440,000 in fines. Serves him right for kidnapping a whole freaking kindergarten of children. Bro was trying to start his own planet. The 3rd spot goes to Junior, with 1 death penalty, 2 life sentences, 95 years and 2 months in prison, and $510,500 in fines for annihilating the freaking universe. And the number 2 spot goes to Jeffy, who has done almost every crime known to man. assault, and nuking America. For that, he got 1 death penalty, 10 life sentences, 122 years in prison, and a $78,000 fine. And now, the biggest criminal in SML history is none other than Mr. Goodman. He has done some really messed up things, such as eating human flesh, people, killing all 14 of his butlers, and so much more. His total sentence would be 6 death penalties, 47 life sentences, 200 years in prison, and a $95,000 fine.